Welcome to the Pioneer Agronomy Update. We've made our way to Rolla, North Dakota. We are at North Border Seed with Ross Garrison here, and we'll be visiting with Kristie Sundeen here as well, agronomist, field agronomist with Pioneer. Ross, let's start out. You got some rain last night. That's been a rare thing to talk about this year.
Yes, that's the big story. Probably the most general rain we've had this year. I've heard anywhere from an inch 30 to an inch 75. Started in the morning and rained off and on all the way through the evening.
Usually, to get an all-day rain or like you had here, it's been a rarity this season.
Very rare. Those are normally the kind of rain we get in the spring, and we finally got a good one here in August. So
we'll take it. Kristie, tell me from your territory, pretty general rainfall?
The northern tier got some rain for the most part, but I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to talk down by the New Rockford Pheasant. I know I saw on the radar that they had some rain down there, maybe some hail. Haven't had a chance to check in with those guys, but Langdon anywhere from 3.5 inches to 6/10, depending on where you are. And then over by Munich, I heard some as high as 4.5 to almost 5 inches. So guys weren't exactly happy with those 3.5 to 5, but I think at this point, if they want soybeans, they'll take what they can get.
Yeah, exactly. I think we all needed some moisture. We talk about the crops themselves. Give me some idea. Where are we sitting with the crop in this region, Ross?
Soybeans, I still think there's a lot of potential there with yesterday's rain, especially the later maturing soybean varieties. I think that'll be extremely beneficial. Some pretty nice looking sunflowers in the area. Wheat, it remains to be seen. It looks better now than I expected it to at this point in time.
It seems like as we've been traveling around the region, it's like there's two crops in one field, particularly on wheat.
Yes, with lack of snow cover and lack of spring rains, we have basically one crop that's 10 days behind the other crop in the same field.
What about insect pressure? We've been hearing a lot of things about hoppers and other things out here.
Grasshoppers probably have been our biggest problem. We haven't treated that many fields. We have some hot spots south of town here around Perth and then up along the Canadian border. There's been a few fields treated there.
Besides hoppers, any other insect pressure?
Diamondback moth has moved into the canola here probably in the last 10 to 14 days. We've been watching that very closely. We haven't had anything at threshold yet. We're a little concerned about the later maturing or the later seeded canola, how that could affect that. So we'll be back out Thursday again to take a look at those fields and see if we need to do any treating there.
You guys do a lot of scouting with growers?
Yeah, we cover roughly 550 fields in the area here, so
keeps you busy.
Yes.
Kristie, you talk about canola. You keep a good eye on that. What kind of situation have you seen with this year's canola crop?
It's going to be all over the board. Honestly, some of these early fields I think actually have some of the better potential. I'm a little concerned about these later fields. I think the rain is going to help us a little bit on that, but for some of them the rain came a little late too. Insect pressure is a lot worse in the fields that are, end of flower, early pod set. We're seeing a lot more insect pressure in those. You mentioned diamondback moth. We've got some fields being sprayed in the Cavalier County area. And some of them it's borderline, but then you throw in flea beetles and grasshoppers in the same field and you got 3 insects that are not at threshold. Technically you're at threshold. So there's guys that are spraying for insects. Some are just border spraying, some are full field spraying. So it's a little on all over the board, but I think there'll be fields that run over a ton, and I think there'll be fields that run 900 pounds. I think it's just going to depend when you got the rain, when it was planted, how many rains you got, and when those rains happened to determine what you end up for yield.
From canola to sunflowers, been so dry. Have we had any issues with rust or anything?
Yes, we did see some rusts come in about 3 weeks ago, but it never actually progressed from the bottom leaves to the top leaves. We have seen a few fields with some red weevils, but nothing close to threshold at this point.
That's good to see. So what about corn? Give me an idea what shape we're in. What stage of development are you seeing in this footprint?
It's the same with everything. You've got multiple crops in the same field. We've got some stuff that's in the milk stage already, and then we've got stuff that's in the blister, and then we've got stuff that's silking all in the same field. So it's a little bit all over the board. Some places the pollination wasn't so good. Some of it was actually pretty decent. Some of it's pollinating right now. So I think this late rain is actually going to help quite a few fields. I was a little worried about tip back in some of these fields where we had good pollination, but I think with this rain, it's going to help a lot of guys in that aspect too. But I also have some areas that are pretty drought stricken, and ears are not looking so good. So some of that I think will end up going towards some silage, but there's some not so good areas, and there's some areas that look fairly decent. I'm not expecting a bumper crop, but I think some guys who received the right rains could have a halfway decent one.
Why, with such variety in one field, we sure don't need an early frost this year.
No, honestly, that was my biggest concern. And as much as these guys don't like these later rains, I'm already thinking for next year. I want to start getting some of these rains, as much as they kind of mess with harvest for us a little bit. I think in the long run, we're going to like the fact that we're getting the rains. We're putting water back in the ground. And if we keep getting these rains, maybe we won't be so dry that our temperatures bottom out and we get an early frost. We can't really afford an early frost. We've got a lot of late canola. We've got a lot of corn that has a long ways to go. Even the later beans have a ways to go yet. They're still flowering, so I don't want an early frost.
Well, as we look ahead, give me an idea, particularly on the Enlist lineup. What are we thinking for 2022?
So Pioneer's really excited about our Enlist lineup. We've got a lot of new varieties coming down the pipe right now. Some of them will be A series in our Pioneer genetics, and we're really excited about those. So we've got some double O's coming down the pipe that have good IDC score. Not promising there's going to be a lot of supply, because I think that's going to be our number one issue. I think we've got some that we'll be able to get some out in the fields. But when we hit 2023, I think that's when we're going to have a really good supply of early double O in the A series for Enlist.
I think no matter what, this is a year we probably need to book early.
Yeah, everything. I mean, think of the general conditions that you're running in right now. There's a specific variety or hybrid that you want, the earlier the book, the better off you're going to be, because we fill based on booking for the most part. So if you're interested in something, contact your sales rep, get booking. We actually will have pricing coming out here in the next week. So we're going to be ready for if you want to book early. Don't be afraid to come in and start asking questions already.
Good deal. You see a lot of interest in Enlist here, Ross?
Yes, one of our biggest weed problems in this area is actually volunteer canola. And not just straight Roundup Ready volunteer canola. We've seen some cross-pollination in this area, so the 2,4-D part of the Enlist will help considerably with that, and for the most part, Liberty is lights out on kochia.
Tell me about your agency itself here.
I started in 2012 with Greg Mitchell, who was the fellow that owned this agency at that point in time, and then he decided to retire, and I bought out in 2016.
And certainly with your scouting, you got a pretty good business in this footprint.
Yeah, the scouting's been good for us. We do soil sampling, variable rate mapping, things like that as well, on top of the seed. So,
good deal. Ross Garrison with us from North Border Seed here in Rolla, North Dakota. Kristie Sundeen here as well, field agronomist with Pioneer. That's our Pioneer Agronomy update. I'm Don Wick on the Red River Farm Network.